Hi there! Thanks so much for being here. I am coming on tonight to talk to you about 3 ways that parenting experts have historically failed families raising strong-willed kids. So, if you don't know who I am, my name is Angela Pruce. I am the face behind the website Parents with Confidence, where I write about raising emotionally healthy kids. I have been a child and family therapist. In practice for about 15 years now, and also have 3 kids of my own, 2 of whom are spirited, strong-willed, and my heart and my passion is supporting parents raising strong-willed kids and finding more confidence in their parenting and more connection and cooperation with their child. So again, I'm so glad you're here. Let me know in the comments if this is you, if you are a parent raising a fierce, outspoken, determined, spirited child, and let me know how old they are. So let's jump right in. Today we're going to talk about the 3 main things, 3 big ways that parenting experts, sadly myself included, have failed parents raising strong-willed kids. We're going to talk about why these 3 things do not work for spirited kids and what does work much better and what will be much more effective. So the first way that parenting experts have often failed parents looking for support and guidance in raising their strong-willed child is by this utmost primary focus on what's known as behaviorism. Essentially, behaviorism is focusing, just what it sounds like, right? Focusing on the human's behavior, on a child's behavior only and primarily, right? We are conditioned to believe as parents that our child's behavior is the end all and be all, that it is the determinant of what kind of a kid they are and what kind of a parent we are, and we judge ourselves on it, and others judge us on it, and we judge our child, and all of this focus is on behavior and really getting the behavior to be what align with our own expectations, right? Is essentially how can we increase or decrease a behavior is what behaviorism is asking us to do. So when we talk about it, we're specifically talking about what's known as reinforcement, and that can be positive or negative. If we're being honest though, which one does it usually look like in parenting? It looks like the negative reinforcement, right? Most often these approaches historically have been punitive and negative. So we're talking about, yelling, we're talking about shaming, we're talking about threatening, we're talking about punishing, punitive and negative, kind of isolating timeouts, grounding, all of these sorts of things, right, would fall in this punitive category. So we have been told that if we just stick to the behavior, right? If we just focused on eliminating the behavior, focus on the behavior, that things will be fine, right? The second way that parents have been failed is when we use these big generalizing kind of blanket statements that are that relate to positive parenting in new ways, more rooted in research and neuroscience, right? Strategies on raising kids that are fantastic and great and wonderful. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I'm a huge advocate of these things and I write all about positive parenting and positive discipline. However, the problem happens when we don't acknowledge, and when as experts, we don't acknowledge the deep foundational work that needs to come before these really pivotal effective strategy, positive parenting tenets, like connecting with your child, right? And staying calm and trying to be present and not react, to your child's behaviors. I talk to so many parents that feel so frustrated because they try these strategies and they might be effective for a day and they might succeed for a day or two, but as soon as one rug or another is pulled out, if they're having a hard day, if the child is, having a hard day and continually engaging in challenging behaviors, if they're getting triggered all the time, they don't have the skills and that really strong foundation that they need to be able to put these things into practice, right? This doesn't just happen overnight. Changing our parenting and changing ourselves doesn't happen overnight. So that is the second way. The third way that we fail families raising spirited kids is by giving really quick one-off general tips and tricks without getting deeper into the understanding why the behavior is happening and why we're using that strategy, why this is helpful, and why it's based on, what we know about the way that a child learns best, or a way that, child psychology, whatever it might be. So those are the 3 ways we failed. The reasons that they don't work, I just mentioned some of them. Behaviorism does not work with strong-willed kids. Strong-willed kids are too complex for it, and they demand to be heard. They demand to have what's under their surface, right? Their internal world and their internal experience. They demand to have that be seen and be heard and be validated. And sometimes they demand it through their behaviors if we're only looking at the surface, right? And I fell victim to this big time, right? I did this with my daughter when she was younger. I relied on this behaviorism crutch. And behaviorism, I say crutch, I think is a good word, because it feels good sometimes to focus on behaviorism, because what illusion does it give us as parents? It gives us a huge illusion of being in control, right? And our kids do not like being fully controlled, and we often want to fully control. So that is a big problem and a big impasse, almost always initially, with parents that are using behaviorism and spirited strong-willed kids. So I learned this in grad school. It was a huge foundation of my child psychology program, or not even in grad school, in undergraduate, a huge foundation of that. And I taught it in the nonprofit I worked at. I used it with my own child. I used it good, right? I said, oh, excuse me. I said to myself, stick with it. You've got this. You have to, you can't give in. You can't back down. You have to show her who's boss, right? That's all part of it, right? And I had to learn. It wasn't until parenting expert Angela came into contact with actual parent Angela that I realized, after, 4 years later, actually, after it came into contact with parent Angela, that this is not working. Behaviorism is not working. It's actually making things worse with my strong-willed child. It is not meeting her needs. It is not allowing me to support her. It is pushing her farther away from me and increasing her resistance. So it definitely just does not work. Using the second thing, the positive parenting philosophies, without starting with the foundations that we need to do that, without really changing ourselves from the inside out and really learning to better understand ourselves, why we react the way we do, right? Where that comes from, how we can help ourselves to stay regulated, how we can understand our stress response, all of those things. If we don't do that, it's going to be almost impossible to implement these tools long term, right? Without reverting back to these go-to punitive methods that our brains know so well, because so many of us were raised that way. Our parents were people, did the best they could with what they had. And that's the way things were primarily done. So that's what we know. We revert back. And finally, the one-off tips and tricks, they don't work because we have to understand what is driving the behavior before we can help to support it and help guide it in a more, respectful, pro-social, whatever you want to say, direction. If we don't understand that, if we're just looking at something that says, say this to your child and don't say that, without understanding the context of why that's coming up for your child. What patterns are you observing in their behavior? What kinds of situations are they getting most resistant in, right? What do you see happening for them? And then, okay, now I know the why, right? If we don't have the why, then it's not going to be effective to use the surface level quick one-off strategy. So what should you be doing instead? We again just spoke to some of these things. We should be prioritizing. You need to prioritize your child's internal experience and internal world more than their external world, more than their behavior. What is going on inside them and really becoming good at being a detective of that. Secondly, we need to do the hard, deep work of learning about ourselves. Sometimes this entails going to therapy, sometimes it entails taking courses or getting more support, talking to other moms groups, all of these things. These things are ongoing, right? Figuring out how to take care of ourselves and our emotions so that we can show up and embody the qualities that we want to see in our child, right? So that is going to be so much more effective. Thirdly, understanding our child, doing the learning that it takes and is necessary to really put a context to their behaviors, understanding temperament, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what are their values. All of these things will then help you understand, how to implement those how-tos, right? Because in every situation it might be different. Your kid is going to be unique and different, and different situations will be, and ages will be unique and different. So you have to have that underlying context and really being an expert in your child, knowing, understanding what helps kids learn best. We have so much information now, and it's such an amazing thing, right? We know what opens up kids' brains, literally, what things we can do that will open it, close it to learning, and really knowing these things and the why behind them is the only way that we're going to be able to implement them successfully ongoing, because we need a why, right? We can't change our behavior. Humans can't change their behavior unless really we have a why and we have a motivation and we want to change, for the long term. So we can't put the cart before the horse. You have to have these foundations first. And why do parenting experts not talk about them a lot? Well, for a long, long time, we really didn't know a lot of these things, right? We really didn't have a lot of the information we have now. And secondly, these things aren't very fun to talk about. If you have made it to the end of this video, I give you props, because this isn't a super shiny, topic to be talking about. I'm sitting here telling you that you need to do a lot of work, essentially, because it's misleading when people tell you that you're going to be able to do this and that, and all of a sudden it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. Your child is a complex, amazing kid, and so your parenting journey is going to be more complex. You are being called to, a journey of growth and of learning, and it's going to challenge you more than raising a typical child will. It just does. So being upfront, and I think that we appreciate when people are forthright with us and upfront in that this is what it's going to take, right? Because we want to succeed. We want to have the family we always dreamed of. You want to have cooperation, and you want to have a connection and a relationship with your child, of course, right? You want to get them to cooperate with you day to day so you can be sane and your family can run smoothly most of the time, but you also don't want to damage your relationship with your child, and you want to build those bonds that you always have, and that is harder and more complex with your spirited child. So I hope that this was helpful, and yeah, just in case you've forgotten, because it's easy to do that some days with spirited kids, you are an amazing parent, and your strong-willed child is an amazing kid. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your night, and I will see you soon.